Hello out there. All right, this is Howler Mouse coming to you on a Sunday afternoon. Today is September 28th, 2025. For you people in the future, thanks for jumping on here and joining me. And, I think I've reached a point in the evolution of my collecting where, I think it's time to kind of reevaluate what I have here and what I'm doing and where I'm going forward with collecting stuff. And I think this is something that a lot of people are either going through now, gone through in the future, gone through in the past, and a lot of people don't see it coming because they just don't think about these things. We have Lester here. Come here, Lester. We have Lester here popping on here. So play. Oh, hey, John, what's up? You guys make sure that you comment, like the video. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Um, this is one of the few places I feel like on YouTube where we actually read our comics, talk about our comics, and kind of talk about collecting. Um, what has it been? This is usually right on the top of my head. There's no script today, guys. There's hardly ever a script. There's no script today. So all the topics I want to bring up, there's going to be some bitching. There's going to be some reality. There's going to be some things I bring up that maybe will help you think of things. And I'll talk about what I'm doing right now with the collecting and stuff. And there's more than one reason to maybe kind of quit the collecting of at least modern comics and stuff, which I barely do anymore. So, guys, now that my cat has slowed down and we've had people jump on here, great to see everybody. One more time, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you have liked the video. Make sure you have shared the video in the live stream, and definitely make sure you comment and stuff. I get around to reading all the comments as I can and stuff, right? So before we go on here, I want to show you a few things to let you know where I've been. For $2, I took the wife and the Anderson couple, the Tim Anderson we talk about here a lot. Last Sunday we had lunch in Abingdon, went to the movies, saw Howl's Moving Castle because there's a Studio Ghibli thing going around the theaters this year. Where they're re-releasing a bunch of the movies. And when we got to the theater, this movie bucket was on sale for $2. And as you can see, it is Justice League, Justice Society, DC Comics. Uh, that is the theme. And I think this is just so cool. So when I bought that, I was like, oh, yeah. So that was cool. And then, guys, I do a little bit of journaling. So if you want to know why there haven't been a lot of videos and a lot of live shows, I'm actually going to tell you because I have simplified some of my journaling, even when I don't have time. Here we go. Yeah, this is my journal slash sketchbook. Yeah. Anyway, there's a couple things in here. But anyway, to kind of let you know what's going on and where I've been. All right, so I just sat here and wrote down all the dates of what's been going on over since August 23rd. Went to Myrtle Beach for a weekend, a few days with the family. August 30th, went kayaking. August 31st, Hillsville Flea Market, McKay's in Winston-Salem with Josh. Made $70 trading in books. September 4th, dentist removed permanent retainer. I've had dental work, dental surgery. Kayaking again with the wife on a weekend. What else we got here? Received a signed book from my buddy Charlton 66, which I may show here. From they had the comic book shop that he works at had a few comic book people in there, creators there. Had a company picnic at work. Got my 10-year pin again. It's my second time around with the company. Went to Dublin Flea Market. Only got 4 comics that time. If you have them on Instagram, you'll see it. Spent a weekend in Giles County. Actually drove around, ended up in the resort that they shot Dirty Dancing. That was kind of cool. And then, like I said, had dental surgery, 8th and the 15th and stuff. Had my stitches taken out, right? So it blows my mind where I feel like I never get anything done, and I wonder why I'm tired. And it turns out I got quite the life there, plus doing anywhere between 40 and 45 to 50 hours a week at work and stuff, right? So in between all of that, I have been trying to kind of work on the comics and things, right? It's a lot of things have slowed down. The comic book online comic book shop, Gmart, that I've used for years, were bought out. I think it was about a year ago, and I have not heard anything from customer service or anyone for 2 or 3 months now. There's been comic books that have been Sandman #8. The facsimile edition that want to re-release the first appearance of Death was canceled due to the gaming scandal. You know what I mean? And I haven't got a refund on it. And there's books sitting there, and then there's books that I have not received in my queue to be sent out, and I'm finding them at Books A Million, like the Compact Comics New Frontier, by the great Darwin Cook and stuff. And that's when I really started, looking around for other places to shop. DCBS seems to be the way. Uh, so that was one thing that really got to me. I'm not missing getting these older comics, and also the things I'm buying are just recycled new covers, trades, epic collections, and things like that. Whenever I do get a few new comics, it's a mixed bag for me, right? So in that time, I turned around and didn't realize it, but I spent a little bit too much money on boards and bags. I have stuff that I have not rebagged and reboarded for 30 years. So here's the first stack. These are the old boards and bags. And here's the second stack of boards and bags that I did last week. And some of these can be recycled from my older books that I've carried around since a kid that are beat up. Luckily, some of these are in better shape than those. Oh, put those down straight because they go everywhere when they tumble and stuff, right? Be able to recycle some of those probably on the New Universe stuff, right? So that's another thing, right? That about wondering, is it time to quit collecting? Between the comic book shops that have over the last 10 years have shut down, the links that you have to go to get to a comic book shop, the online comic book shops where it seems like where it was 99% of the time everything was fine, even that started to become a little bit of a hassle. We have to have things to do. You know what I mean? I don't have time to sit here and worry if my order is going to go through, right? And then my CLZ app, guys, that I want to show you here. You get to see my CLZ app, because you're going to see, as of right now, I have 16,508 comics, trades, assorted books, slipcase books, collected editions, and all that thing here. And I would say 3,000 more to put on there, but I'm not doing that. I'm purging those. So technically, there's about 20,000 books in this house. Over the years of doing this, I did a purge. I think it was back in 2013, and then ended up getting a collection with 3,000 comics in it for free from someone. Then I had another one. As soon as I give to my purge, I get very blessed. You know what I mean? Like really look up into some stuff. So over the years, since I've been collecting, since I had the stepdad's collection to begin with, some of the uncle's collection, bought my first in 1977, bought my first real comic with my money in 1979. I've kind of done the math in my head, and I would say 50,000 comics of some sort have come and gone through these hands in these boxes and stuff, counting the 2 boxes that were ripped off of me and 2 other times that I had a little bit of some comics stolen over the years. I've told those stories before over the years, right? So is it time to quit collecting modern comics? I think it is, okay? Because first of all, the upkeep, the space, and what am I actually going to read in the lifetime that I have? Because that's the problem. I actually read my comics, then come on up here and we talk about them and stuff, right? Okay. The other thing is the products that are coming out have been on a steep decline for the last 10 years. Okay. In my opinion, I think comics have really, I'm getting, now that we have 2020 hindsight, I really feel like Marvel peaked around Infinity Gauntlet in the Jim Shooter years, the Infinity Gauntlet, around 90 and stuff, 1990, and then Image came out. And as time has gone by, Marvel has pretty much abandoned their continuity. And then over the last 10 years, to get in a new invisible audience, and the rise of Comicsgate and so many things. It's not really become by the book, but we've had things like this, things that are so forgettable, things that were just absolute PR disasters. It became more about the stunts and the events than it did the actual product. I mean, let's go back and I mean I think a fair comparison. Let's go back and look at the Roger Stern, John Byrne issues of Captain America versus what they did in Secret Empire and things like that, going way back. And then when it comes to the back issues and things like that, thank goodness that comic book collecting, that um, the actual hobby itself, YouTube is not the end all be all. Now, this is an observation, right? There are still channels out there that do story time where they read the comics for you or the events or they explain things for you so you don't have to try to get those books or do a Wikipedia search or anything and they'll explain the stories. Then you have those channels where I've kind of enjoyed those because I've got a ton of those. I've seen it all before, but now they're really getting into the editing and stuff like that. And they do a little bit more research than just off the top of their head, like I and others have done, going way back to like 2010, when we would talk about the idea of growing up collecting these comics and what we remember from reading the comics and giving you the history and finding out about the companies that went out. I love the stuff in the background, things where we read Comic Scene and Wizard and Amazing Heroes, the mags and the editorials, and you would dig down and really try to learn this stuff from the hands-on and stuff, right? So you have a handful of channels out there who are doing like mini documentaries, a lot of editing, which is fantastic. And then I have heard one or two of those channels, Strange Brain Parts. I think that's it. I haven't really played around with comic book YouTube in a while. But I think with Strange Brain Parts, it seems like a couple months ago he announced that he quit his job. And if it's not him, I apologize. We'll go with alleged in my memory here. He had quit his job to go full time YouTube and stuff, right? And that's never been my goal or other people's goal, right? That I've really stuck around here on YouTube with when it was a much smaller actual community and stuff, right? So that's what I'm getting at is thank goodness that the actual hobby, right? Because seriously, a lot of the channels that I've subscribed to, YouTube ebbs and flows. Over the years, as much as I have watched YouTube and been part of YouTube, also lucky enough to do that. I mean, it's a time and a day and an age where I'm actually able to broadcast myself through broadband and talk to people around the world and collectors and see video. This is a great thing. I mean, it's a gift when you really stop and slow down and think about it. But it's a gift and stuff. But a lot of the people who actually read read their comics, made videos where they would buy the comics and tell you about them and things like that. They're few and far between now. Some of those guys are still out there and they do not get the views that I think they deserve. But the people who I thought may have been abandoning the hobby. It turns out they just abandoned YouTube. Okay, all right. You can go to local cons around here. I always talk about how I will take where I live and I will draw a 3-hour circle with me in the center, and I can tell you about comic book shops from here to Knoxville, from here to Charlotte, from here to Roanoke and above beyond. The comic book shops there are actually doing pretty good. There's always a crowd in there. There's a pull list. Obviously, people bringing in their kids when I'm able to hop in. And that's been so consistent over the last few years that it's great to see that there is the ability to continue thriving. Okay. And then you go to the comic book conventions. Okay. Heroes Con. Okay. Rob Con, that hasn't been going on for a while in the Bristol, Tennessee, Virginia, Kingsport, Tri-Cities, Johnson City area. Then you have Charlotte Con, Charlotte Comic Con, all these things that are going on. And when you get down there, man, it is a ton of people, and the back issue market is just amazing when you get down there. People are going after creators. And then, like I said, over the last year, I have really seen an increase in the people who are there for the key books with the key collector and the greed. You can feel the greed that's in the room and stuff, right? So this is an evolution. Things are changing. And for me, it's always to go back to exactly what it is. I have a Sunday morning show, right? The Rainy Sunday Show. And I named that through my experience of having those days where I could not go outside because it was raining too bad. And I would get a stack of comics and I would crawl on the top bunk of the bunk bed and I could hear the rain on top of where, depending on where I live, trailer, the house. I actually lived in a house in 1984 to 85 that actually had a hole in my ceiling, and it would rain straight through and it'd get on the corner of my bed, things like that. So that's a real experience. And when you sit down at the end of the day, the reason I can sit here and kind of be disgusted with some of these comics and stuff compared to just comics of yesteryear, and there were some bad comics back then, don't get me wrong, is when you sit down and at the end of the day, it is you in the comic. All right. You in the comic. At the end of the day, YouTube doesn't matter. Talking to your friends about this doesn't matter. The value of the comic doesn't matter. Are you connecting with it? There are eras of Jack Kirby that I absolutely love and feel nostalgic about. And then there's eras of Jack Kirby where his artwork, mostly the 70s stuff with the DC and a few Marvel books there, The Losers, his OMAC #1 cover and stuff scared the crap out of me. But I can look back on like the first 35 issues of Fantastic Four, thanks to Epic Collections and Marvel Age and some of those books that were in the house and stuff like that. And he had those bold lines. And he had the pages with the rule of three and the flow of them and stuff and everything like that. And then you can see the evolution of his art. There's so much more to just collecting than what's offered today a little bit on YouTube and stuff, right? And that's why it's okay. That's why I think it's all right to say these things. And that's the other thing that I want to kind of talk about real quick here. Let me check these comments. We have oh, okay. John is here, of course. We have Flavius Craticus. Hey, y'all. Crackdadius, excuse me. Flavius Crackdadius. Great to see you. Zinc Age Comics. That's our brother Josh. Just what I needed. A Howler Mouse evening stream. I'm glad you could join us there, Josh, and hopefully we can get you back on here. The Comic Collector. Never time to quit collecting. The only time to start renting storage units. That's a great thing to say there, Comic Collector. So there are people who are lifers, and those are great people and stuff, right? So the other thing is just the conversation. One of the things that I've seen on YouTube, and let me tell you how far back I go, man. All right, okay. So it started out with you can go back and watch a video, a actual music video by Weezer called Pork and Beans, and they grabbed all the celebrities on YouTube from the 2000s up to the early 2010, 11, I think, or something. And you had the guy that sang Chocolate Rain. You had Dramatic Hamster. You had the South Carolina Beauty Queen. You had the Coca-Cola and Mentos white robe scientists and stuff during their stunts. You had the Hello Go guys. Is that what it was? Hello Go. The four guys that would dance on the, what do you call them? You jog on them on the inside. I'm going blank on what they're called. But anyway, you had a lot of stunts and stuff. You had the guys that were doing the Superman dance or whatever it was called, right? I mean, I'm going back 20 years, guys. Sorry. You know what I'm saying? And all of those minute YouTube special celebrities, YouTube had a very cool identity, right? And then you come in there and you had people who were like coming up with ideas and the early days of talking about comics, and you just never knew what you were going to find. Then I started seeing things where you had a community of people who would put on Kate Perry songs like Alien with the radio beside them, and they would sing it. Then you had things like atheist groups and skeptics groups. Shoe on Head is still around. A lot of those guys. Thunderfoot, Laughing Witch. And then you used to have BoobTube. You used to have girls that would just react to other videos, act like airheads and have their boobs hanging out and stuff, and act like, what? I don't have my boobs hanging out. I'm just dressing this way. You had to get some guy named Yellow Taxi Cab Driver and stuff. You had some weird stuff going on with guys like the Russian Deadpool and stuff, right? There's just some weird stuff, and you had to try to figure out if a lot of this stuff is this real or is it as scripted as wrestling? You had wars going on and stuff, right? So these things come and go, and these channels had big time views and a lot of subscribers and stuff, right? So that's what I'm trying to tell you. There's an evolution. So where we're at right now with like things like Comicsgate and the things with Key Comics and people doing that stuff, it's just an evolution of YouTube. And thank goodness that to me, a majority of that has really stayed on YouTube and hasn't affected the cons out there and stuff. Now, I have seen books that have been priced completely wrong. Now, that's another reason I'm thinking about quitting the modern day collecting and kind of seeing what I need. That's the thing. I have plenty. I have things I need to read. I have complete sets of things that I can sit down and finally read that I've been putting together over the last few years. After these things have been hanging going back to the 90s, I wanted to complete these things, right? I mean, we're talking about stuff from Legion 89, Legion 90, Legion 91. If you know that series, whatever year it was, they would change the number, but it was 70 issues, couple annuals. Quasar 1 through whatever it is, 60 or whatever, right? I've had my Sandman, my Neil Gaiman Sandman collection and stuff, like all these stuff that I've completed. I've got all my Rick Veitch, Alan Moore Swamp Things. I've got to get through Cerebus. I've got 200 and I don't know what it is, 25 issues of Hellblazer with 75 more to go if I decide to go forward with that. Have not read all of those, and that is what's wild, because up until about 2016, 2017, no comic really sat around this house longer than 3 months without being read. So I have plenty to read and things to do and stuff, right? And just kind of give you an example of what I'm talking about. For some reason, maybe this can be a legitimate evolution of the collecting, right? You see that says Mark Jewelers. I have a ton of the Mark Jeweler books from just finding them over the years, and from the uncle being in the Army, a truck driver in Vietnam, and from the stepdad being in the Navy, right? So tons of Mark Jewelers that are actually more of a hassle in your collection than anything at one point. Reading your comic book, and it's like having too many commercials is what it was like. And then we have more misinformation. In order to keep people interested, the God, what we used to call them, the I hate even using that word, the speculation channels, if that's what they're still called, will come up with a book. I don't know who makes these decisions. I don't understand how these things go out, but not too long ago, this Dazzler #3, I guess because Dr. Doom is on it, this is a joke. This was a hot book. I saw people buying this on eBay for up to $50 the 2-3 times I checked in just to see what was going on. And this book is, if it's worth $3, I'd be amazed. Where did I find mine? I found mine in a mall up here for $1. This was a buck, #4. And that's the thing, whenever these spec books get going, I'll go out and just kind of show you out in the wild. No, they're not. They're not worth anything. And at the same time, I found very cool stuff like some John Byrne art from, I think, 1975, in Marvel Chillers. And then I found a beat up copy of X-Men 123 with a Terry Austin cover. I don't think John Byrne did this. I think it's just a Terry Austin cover, which I found I need to research and stuff. Uncanny X-Men for $1. Beat up, but it was $1. Oh man, so that's what I'm kind of getting at. It's sort of like some of this stuff, I feel like it's running off a lot of people who are going to be new to the hobby because, number one, it's overwhelming. And then they go to these YouTube channels to hopefully find some guidance, and they'll end up wasting money on books like these that are supposed to be spec. Next thing I know, they're like, I got to spend that much money. They don't know better. And then there are things like these, sort of like, this used to be a spec book. I don't know if you guys knew that, but it comes and goes. It comes and goes. The ebbs and flows. The market does not work like that. I've said all this stuff before. And then on top of the other thing that makes me kind of wonder if it's time to move on is that two things can be true. I think Josh, if he's still here, I think Josh was who I was talking to about this on a drive or something. Yeah, I think it had to be Josh. But two things can be true. A creator can be an absolute piece of garbage, but they can also, at the same time, be an absolute great writer. And we live in an era right now where I hate to use the word cancel culture and stuff, but it's sort of like if somebody does wrong, they need to disappear, and everything they've ever done, all their merits and efforts and everything need to be gone. Is that right or wrong? That's not for me to say. All I can do is make my personal choice, right? So, right now, the person in question was Neil Gaiman. I'm assuming it is still Neil Gaiman. And then we had the guy who just got fired from DC And yes, he is a guy. I don't care um, what he prefers. He is a guy who came out and said horrible things about the death of Charlie Kirk. Nightwing #1 came out, and then all of a sudden that was supposedly a hot collectible book, right? #1, it's a Nightwing #1. As anything in comics, I have characters I absolutely love, like Armor. If you know, you may have never heard of that from continuity comics. I have my Starman, who is not exactly a household name. Those that know. I have my Commandy back in the 90s. If you were collecting Jack Kirby 70 stuff from DC, like OMAC and Jack Kirby, even the hardcore Jack Kirby fans and comic book collectors were like, oh, you're way deep. Where even Wizard Magazine and Toy Fair were making jokes about people that did that. You see what I'm saying? Like, these things ebb and flow. But yeah, first of all, it's Nightwing. Thank goodness they just had him on Nightwing and not one of their iconic characters. And then speaking of iconic characters, things like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, they're already announcing and looking forward to when the copyright, I don't know, slash trademarks, I don't know exactly what we're looking at here, but they're going to run out and they're going to go into public domain, right? Now, if I go back with comic book history and things, I do suspect that's one of the reasons we have absolute Batman coming out, right? I think we're going to see more and more weird stuff with these heroes and not the traditional character-driven stories, the history of the characters, the pulp roots. I think we're going to see more and more weird stuff because when they knew Crisis was coming, they did some wild stuff with the Flash killing Joke. With my research and stuff, killing Joke was supposed to come out before Crisis came out, which is why they did horrible things to Batgirl. It wasn't going to matter. The universe was going to be rebooted, but the art took so long. Alan Moore was such a hit. Everything kind of combined where that came out way after where it was supposed to have been. I think Brian Bolland even said that nobody really bothered him for a few years. And then one day they finally called him up and like, so where you at with it? You know what I mean? Like there was zero pressure to really get that book out. And that's what I'm getting at. I think the comics in the future and stuff, and going with now into the future and stuff. I think when something good does come out, it's not going to last, and there's going to be such a turnover like we've seen for years. I mean, how many Captain Marvel #1s came out there? Now we have absolute Batman, absolute Wonder Woman, absolute Martian Manhunter, absolute Superman, which I hear generally positive reviews for people who can find those and get a hold of those. But as we can see, with the way things have been going, like I said, I'm specifically targeting the last 10 years. How long is it really going to last? You know what I mean? Marvel would have a little cool book on the corner. People were really celebrating things like Immortal Hulk, and they were celebrating Mark Waid's Daredevil and stuff. And they actually were being left alone in their little corner of the mess that Marvel was making. And DC has followed suit. Don't get me wrong. This isn't one-sided here. And then all of a sudden it was like, hey, something's going on over here, and they have to they have to try to fix something that's not broke for whatever grammatical reasons are behind the scenes stuff that's going on and everything like that, right? The political decisions, let's make some propaganda instead of entertainment and things like that have seeped in, and hopefully we're starting to get out of that stuff, right? Just the fact that Scott Snyder came back, to DC. See, and that's what I'm saying. A lot of people have forgotten that Snyder had left, and you had like the Whisper Network, whatever they called themselves, um, you know, talking smack about Scott Snyder while they were making web comics. Well, you know what I mean? A lot of creators want to go make web comics. But anyway, and that's what I'm trying to get at. I think the biggest thing that has come out since I've been recording in the last month or two or whatever's going on has been the first installment of Deadpool Batman crossover. I didn't get it because it has Zeb Wells writing it. Zeb Wells is not a horrible writer per se, but that's the best they have to write this great big huge guaranteed money book. Thank goodness, and we'll see if he delivers. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I have no high expectations, but I will be getting hold of the DC Batman Deadpool book that's going to be written by Grant Morrison. Now, for people who haven't read those books and might want to point something out and stuff, there's 3 or 4 stories in those books. Kevin Smith, I think I saw a panel or something where he did a Green Arrow. Oh God, meets Daredevil, and that makes sense because he wrote both books. And in my opinion, his Green Arrow book was better than the Daredevil book of the '90s with Marvel Knights, in my opinion. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, right? So that's what I'm trying to tell you. Even the things that are guaranteed, they don't have the star power they once did. You know what I mean? Uh, we have. I'm not interested in what I used to follow things like John Byrne. John Byrne would bring the Super Scroll into each book. You know what I mean? Grant Morrison would have one great big huge story across all of his books if you kind of read between the lines. He turned the concept of Weapon X for Wolverine into Weapon 10, meaning that there were other experiments. He was the 10th experiment. And he went to DC and came out with a book called We Three about animals who had cybernetic parts and things like that. And the We Three, with a wink and a nod, meant Weapon Three. Experiment, the third experiment in all of those. You follow me? So that's what I'm trying to tell you. That was kind of fun to do that. You would follow Sting Englehart around, and sometimes he would pull up Mantis or a Mantis-like character from the comics. You know what I mean? And then you had the artist you absolutely love, George Perez. The burn victims for John Byrne, George Perez, Alex Ross, David Mazzucchelli, and stuff like that. The Frank Millers, you know what I'm saying? And then you had people who just loved some of those characters. I met people over the years who just collected Supergirl books, the adventure comic stuff from the 70s and things like that, or they were just hardcore Batman. They couldn't tell you a lot about comics, but they could talk Batman all day and stuff, right? I even know I have a friend. His name is also Tim. Back when he was married, their wedding bands were in the shapes of the bat symbol. Okay, seriously, that's what I'm trying to tell you. You know what I mean? He ran forums and stuff just about Batman. He would talk about the Joker, about why things didn't work with Heath Ledger in his mind, because I remember having this conversation with him, because the Joker is supposed to be funny, and what Heath Ledger does isn't really funny. It's an anarchist thing and things like that. There's no real ha ha there and stuff, right? We had some great talks and stuff, right? So a lot of that is just not there. The artistic merit is just not there that I'm used to, which blows my mind because in my day, we had Hellboy, Captain Carrot. You know what I mean? We had some high genre sci-fi stuff and eclectic stuff, and didn't even realize we had all this stuff. You know what I mean? You had the satellite era of the Justice League. You had some bland stuff, and then meanwhile over here, Jim Shooter is really pushing his writers and his artists and stuff, and we get some fantastic stuff from the 80s. We get the introduction of Alan Moore, who brings validity to the writing of comics and things, love him or hate him or anything like that. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. The comics were elevated, and then all of a sudden, about I want to say 10 years ago, but it really started with the Casada era. The bar was just set lower and lower and lower and stuff. And that's where we're at. So if something interesting comes out, I know there's some good stuff out there, but it doesn't last and it's really too hard to find, right? So why waste the money? You know what I mean? Luckily, as if you have watched this channel or you're new to this channel, you can go way back. You're going to see that I would go to flea markets. Probably like, I don't know. I used to have an actual number, but 85% of this entire collection that I have is secondhand. Throughout the 90s, I would rarely, if ever, there's a couple years I did not ever check touch my paycheck. The comics, I had it down to where they would pay for themselves. You know what I mean? When the prices and stuff, right? So now, if you are part of the YouTube comic book community, if you're really in there, not everybody is and stuff, right? You have things that they are having claim sales on Instagram. Some of these people have YouTube channels. You have these spec channels and stuff, right? And it just blows my mind because if you watch these claim sales, I have no idea where they're coming up with these prices. And that's one of the things with purging my books. Do I partake in this? If I want to get rid of some of these books, do I partake in this? Do I throw them on there for the eBay prices? Do I throw them on there for these claim sale prices? This is a $3 book that I showed you, but they actually had people spending up to $50 on it just a few weeks ago. Now, I'm not saying I could do that. You know what I mean? But yeah, there is an online price guide called comicbookrealm.com. You can go see what these books are actually worth. And some of these spec channels do cause enough of a stir that you will see a book on there and you'll get a green arrow. Amazing Spider-Man annual, what was it, 16 or something, the first appearance of Captain Marvel. I actually had screenshots that I shared on Instagram months ago, probably a year ago now. Times were flying by where it shot up to $150. The last time I checked, that thing had dropped to 100. It got the red triangle that was pointing down. So you can see when books get hot and when they're going up and things like that. So being knowledgeable seems to actually be a hindrance with being able to collect comics. I don't know if ignorance is bliss. I don't know if people are in this to have clout and bragging rights. I don't understand, and I'm happy I don't understand how people can just throw their money around like that. When comic books started and we were into this was a cheap hobby on the side. People who were missing out. I mean, these books were 40 cents, and today that'd be like $1.50, $1.60 if I have to do the inflation off the back of my head. 40 cents. When I started, they were 35 cents, switched over to 45 cents. Then they were 60 cents, 75 cents. When they got to $1, I was getting pissed. Then when they got to $1.25, they immediately went up to $1.50. And then the next thing I know, they're $1.75. And I saw some books for $1.95. That's all within a year. I want to say that was from 90 to 91. And that's when the Howler hustle really started. When I was about 18 or 19, I'm like, I'm not paying that. So rarely would I started buying comics off the spinner rack. That's when it kind of stopped. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Thank goodness I'm able to kind of talk about this a little bit and kind of flesh it out, see if other people have had these problems. Here we go. What do we got here? Victor Shade, Starman is a classic. The James Robinson Starman should be required reading if anybody wants to see a great sequential book. Luckily, the 80 issues, 81 if you count the issue that came out for Blackest Night. I think there's 2 annuals and a Starman special. Also have them up here somewhere. I also have some of the omnibus, and I have the collect the whole series and stuff. That's to me that was probably the last great sequential run of a book, and that was from '94 to about 2000. Think about that. You know what I'm saying? Um, Skulatorium. We lost a lot when comics began focusing on ideology over story. Exactly. That's exactly what happened. And a lot of this stuff, you can go back to, I got a video. There's a playlist where I have a video from like 2011 or something, Cookie Dough and Comics or something, where we were talking about community and what comics were about, what they were to me. These are morality stories, and it turned into what it is. A majority of the books turned into propaganda because it was a marketing ploy. And then they also had people who deeply believed that working on these books. They took that over writing ability. I remember people really complaining because Jim Shooter would make people redo pages and things like that, or they would have to tell them the story. Electra was making tons of money. Electra was making tons of money with Frank Miller's Daredevil, and then Frank told him, "I have to kill her." And so what I heard or saw in an interview with Frank Miller on one of my DVDs or something, he just sort of put his head down and he said, "Tell me the story." And once he heard the story was there, he got it. Oh my God, Julius Schwartz. Julius Schwartz. I've read things to where, as simplistic and innocent as those Silver Age stories are, he still would have sit there with writers in his office, and they would end up working late to come up with a story that still made sense and stuff. Right? It seems like there was just a lot more effort, as subtle or whether it was successful or unsuccessful, or it had times of change or anything like that. It seems like there was a little bit more going into the craft, it seems like. You know what I mean? This is not a nostalgic thing or things to throw back, right? So yeah, I kind of think that the future of comics with a lot of things going on, I think they're going to get weird. I think there's going to be some takes that are just stunts, and hopefully maybe there'll be some experimentation where somebody really hits on something. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah. But like I said, if you go out into the real world and you hit some local comic shops, hopefully, depending, I'm talking about my region. West Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, maybe a little bit of touch of Alabama or something like that. Shoo, let me tell you something, guys. Don't believe the what you see on TV a lot. There are places that you see that stereotypes these places, especially Kentucky, Southern Kentucky. But yeah, don't there's a whole cool world out here and stuff, right? But yeah, the like I said, the cons are alive and well. The flea markets over this past year seem to have really dried up, but I've been seeing that for a while, thanks to my Facebook memories. So yeah, it may be time to maybe quit for just a little bit, buying the new stuff. I'm still going to kind of keep an eye out for things. This thing is, I've done this for so long. Um, 1977, 48 years, guys. 48 years of doing this. So, yeah, I'm always going to have a little bit of a nose, or I'm always going to see a pawn shop or a thrift store or an antique shop, or go to State Street in Bristol and hit Mountain Empire, since I've been hitting that place off and on since about 89, I think, 88, 89, possibly 90. I don't know, But anyways, what I'm trying to tell you, this stuff is in my blood. This stuff, this is the same thing as having a television in your house, even though it is flat screen now. You know what I mean? I just kind of grew up with all this stuff. It's been around. So there will never be a quit. Okay. So then that brings us to the purging part of it. Paolo is here. Paolo Costa Comics Perspective. Hey, what's going on? Just shooting the breeze and having some thoughts here, guys, right? So now we're going to be doing the purging on October 10th, I believe, here in the town that I'm in. The library has, for the last couple of years, been having what they have called a comic book convention, right? Um, I'm not telling anybody not to check it out, but I'm actually going to be having a table, and I want to be purging some stuff. I did this a little bit over the summer, made some good money, which surprised me, for what I was purging. And we're going to be doing that again, but they have a lot of families bringing their kids in. There's a lot of crafts there. A few people with actual comics. I'm kind of wondering why they call it a comic book convention. I am doing it because it's for the experience. You know what I mean? Like, to get out there, to get motivated, to do this stuff, right? And what I have found with my purging is that, what do I get rid of? I mean, there's things I'm never going to read again. And then amazingly enough, this is stuff that I've tried to get rid of. I can't give some of this stuff away, right? Dazzler's a mixed bag. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but this horrible one issue magazine made by Heavy Metal a few years ago. This was their attempt at being funny, and it was called Soft Wood. Can't give that away. Saxon Violins. This is by Peter David and George Perez. And it was like they were trying to be controversial in this. And it's horrible. As much as I love both those creators, thank goodness that these two guys came out with Hulk Future Imperfect, because this was horrible. Can't give it away. And it took me a while to get all 4 issues, because of George Perez. And then things like this from Neil Gaiman. He didn't write the book, but it's got beautiful Dan Barrington covers. Lady Justice from Techno Comics. Cannot give that away, right? That's what I mean. What do I do? And then Megaton Man. After finally sitting down and getting a bunch of these, oh my goodness. I've even met Don Simpson and could not get a conversation going with him. They're just not good. Nobody really wants them. And then we have, like, stuff that I kind of experimented with and took a chance on from Vertigo, things like that. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. What do you do with those books that you just can't get rid of, and putting them in a quarter box or something are not going to get rid of it? And then there's things that I should get rid of that are there, right? My Batman and the Outsiders, I've carried those since I was 10. I pulled those off the rack, right? My new universe stuff, right? Majority of what I have there, do I get rid of the stuff that I've carried around since 1979 to, we'll say, 1990? And then there's things that I know I should get rid of because I've gotten rid of them before and ended up replacing them. Those number ones from Image, that's part of history and stuff, right? The letting go part. I did not think I'd be able to do that. I've gotten rid of tons of books in the past, but now we're getting real to where I want to shrink these things, and it's time to get rid of things that I have carried around and read many times over. That's kind of weird. You know what I'm saying? And then we have the things, the sets, right? I have a Tom King Mr. Miracle 12 issue set. Okay. I have his 12 issues of Rorschach. Okay. I have the Batman White Knight complete sets, right? You follow me. Even books that we can laugh at, even though there is some actual good stuff intertwined in there that I think is really underrated. Seriously, probably like Quasar in the 20s. Those issues from like, I don't know what it is, maybe 18 to like I think 26 or 27. Good stuff. They're doing their best Jim Starlin in there and stuff like that. But anyway, I've got a complete set of that stuff, and I don't want to break up the sets. Who is going to come in there and piecemeal it together? And now I'm stuck with an incomplete set. You know what I mean? So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do there. That could be auctions and maybe put a reserve on them and maybe take them to a live auction somewhere and see if there's anybody out there who wants to buy a bulk of full sets. Maybe they can do it that way. I would love to take it to a comic book shop or something around here, but I mean, you're lucky to get a certain percentage of your books, you know, because they have to make a profit. I think, I don't know, I've heard 40% to 60%. And I think if you get around 50%, you're lucky. You know what I mean? I love comic book shops, support them. It's great to find them, even when, you know, some great owners, some weird owners, some guys who've just been the, you know, social, you know, they come in many varieties. You know what I mean? Things like that. And I'm all for supporting them. But when it comes to money, guys, they're the enemy. You know what I mean? And I mean that playfully. You know what I mean? I mean that playfully, you know. So you got to be real careful there. What we got here? Hey, Paolo says, I live in an apartment running out of space. It's definitely real over here. Then we have John. I have comic books stacked everywhere. That's what we have here. And it has trickled out to 1 or 2 boxes upstairs. And then I got a ton of boxes in the downstairs room. Most of my John Byrne stuff, all the stuff I bagged. For you guys that have just come in, let me show you how much I've rebagged in this last month. A repeat for you people that have been here from the beginning. Here's one stack. These are old bags. This is what I've replaced. And this is the stack from this last week. All right. It's all about what I want to maintain. And it's freaking me out a little bit because I found out my Grant Morrison Doom Patrol and my Animal Man. I didn't realize it had been 30 years since I bagged those. Here we go, guys. This happened last week. This is a YouTube issue. All right. We'll give it something to focus on here. So anyway, guys, I'm just holding this up to do it and stuff. So that's what I'm trying to say. It may be time to not collect now. I'm still going to probably go to comic book conventions. I'm still going to check out thrift stores and stuff. So I'll never completely 100% quit, but there's very little reason to start buying any new stuff, right? Actually, the very last book that I know that came in that I bought through my Gmart store, who, like I said, I've got stuff sitting there. I have not heard from anybody in 3 months. I don't know what's going on with that store. Well, the store shut down and a company bought them out. I don't know what happened. I've got stuff sitting there. I don't know if it's going to be shipped to me. I don't know if I'm going to get my refund. There's about $25 worth of stuff I'm still waiting to come in. I don't know what's going on with that, and I'm okay. You know what I mean? The things that I seem to be buying new anyway would be epic collections. You know what I mean? Collections, very few new books. But the last new book that I actually bought was Jay and Silent Bob Meet Archie. Jay and Silent Bob Meet Archie. That was the last new book I really bought. All right. So we get that camera to stop. But anyway, we'll just hold this up. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Now with the purging, I've just got to let go. I've got tons of stuff around here, but my Legion of Superheroes books, I absolutely love the Legion. I actually pull some of that out. I'm not going to give up my Alan Moore stuff. You know what I mean? But can I give up my Rick Veitch, Swamp Thing stuff? Yeah, but I want to get rid of it all in one pop. That's the problem. As I'm looking around, there are crossover events I'm never going to go back and reread. Oh my God, what was that one in the 90s by Mark Wade where all the villains ended up making a deal with somebody who was loosely the devil? Underworld Unleashed. I have two issues of that. How I flipped through it when I was doing all this rebagging. Horrible. You know what I mean? I'm like, so there's going to be stuff I can get rid of. But then there's things like the stepdads and the uncle's books. Those were sort of legacy books. They were kind of that part of the collection. What do I do with those? You know what I mean? Can I get rid of those? I've sold some of that stuff in the past. Back in 2010, instantly regretted it. I think it was like Hulk 108. I need to replace that. Things like that. As soon as I did that, I was like, nope, got rid of a bunch of Spider-Man stuff and inadvertently gave away, what was it, 122? That was in the stack on eBay by accident back in 2010, where it was the death of Gwen Stacy. I had that from the Stepdads collection and stuff. So that's what I'm trying to say. This stuff has history with me. I can hold up a majority of these books, which I've done in videos, and tell you what was going on with my life. So I didn't expect that with purging. And then there's the stuff where I do want to get what it's worth. You know what I mean? There's a couple of books that are keys that should be I should get what they're worth, is what I think. So I think it's all about what am I willing to settle and do, right? So, like I said, when it comes down to downsizing this, do I try to do it in bulk? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I would love to be able to have the advice to give out there, but what I would say is go ahead and do it. Just rip the band-aid off, which is what I'm going to end up doing. I've done that before, but rip the band-aid off, and you're going to find out you're not going to miss as much as you thought. And that's what I'm worried about. I could sit here. I remember when I sold a 350 piece Star Wars toy collection. I think it was in 2006 or 2007. I actually ran into the guy that I sold it to. He still said he still has all that in a storage unit. It turns out that out of 350 pieces, there are 5 things that I wished I'd kept, but there's no way for me to know that until after I gave them. Some of them were eclectic. You know what I mean? Um, so that really surprised me. If I'd known the 5 things that I would have missed, I could have sold a 345 piece collection. I don't want to do that now. And the other thing is like, not to be morbid, but the realistic thing is that I have crossed over 50. I have the bump. I have made it over the bump, right? I have made it over the bump. And the reality is when you're 50, I've always heard there's a rule of 5. I hate to repeat this and get morbid, but you may have 5 minutes, you may have 5 years, you may have 50 years. You know what I mean? And I've already tried to kind of show some of this stuff with my wife. I have actually ended up labeling these boxes key books and things like that. I have labeled the books that are signed. I just showed a Mark Jordan books. I'm going through and I'm labeling some of these books and stuff because she's not going to get it. You know what I mean? Like she doesn't retain the knowledge and stuff. She's great on her manga, but I don't want to leave her stuck with all of this and realize there are some things she could get money for and be taken advantage of. Right? So that's a big part of it. If I shrink this down. In 1994, 93, I sold my Uncanny X-Men books, right? That I bought a majority of those off the racks. I had a few scattered issues of X-Men, don't get me wrong, here and there that the stepdad had. I bought a few issues in 83, but I was so cantankerous that if a book was popular, I went the other way. I didn't want to be part of the Titans or the X-Men because everybody was into them. And then in 85, the Asgardian Wars happened, and I was hooked thanks to Art Adams. So I've got 4 or 5 boxes of mutant stuff. I'll probably give away the Age of Apocalypse. I'll probably get rid of that. You know what I mean? There's things I can get rid of in there. Those Jim Lee years, Mark Silvestri years, that's going to hurt. You know what I mean? That was my stuff through high school. What we got here? And then, of course, Zinc Age is here, but I've meant to say this before. Probably my friends would have first crack on it. I probably have 3 or 4 friends still into comic books that may have first crack at a few things. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, what we got here? Ponaditas. I love having too many books. Haha. I do too. That's what I'm trying to say. To come into this room, to smell these comics, as much as I can complain about comics, especially the last 10 years at least, maybe even 15 years. That's what I'm trying to tell you, to come in here and to pull this stuff out and to be fortunate enough in my life to live in a time where we had David Bowie, we had Queen. I grew up in the aftermath of the Beatles. I can remember just enough of the world pre Star Wars to after Star Wars, to where we had George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Ridley Scott, and John Byrne and Jack Kirby and Will Eisner and all of this stuff, to have the Rubik's Cube. The 50th anniversary one is right there, and that's an old one. To have Watchmen, to have Akira, to be in this time to where I grew up right in the middle of this stuff with history. There was comics before I was born, comics when I was born, comics as I've grown up. I've had this plethora. Same thing with music, to have all this music and to have all this art and to have all this reading and to have all this stuff. I'm very fortunate, as we all are. I think I'm just glad that I've slowed down before and took it all in, that I was able to do all this. We're very fortunate to have YouTube like this. You know what I'm saying? There's just so much. There's just so much to be thankful for, right? But then again, like I said, to see it decline kind of hurts at the same time, right? Um, as Here's a book that is better than it should be. I've never read this book, has such a unique take. And this book, this Doom Patrol Suicide Squad book, shouldn't have been, I don't want to say it's good, but it's got such an identity on its own. I've never felt anything that had read anything that had a feel like this, right? And then that gets used by James Gunn while he's making his Suicide Squad movie, right? To be able to replace a book I had when I was a kid like this, How to Draw Marvel Comics, by trading in a bunch of books and getting this at McKay's. How lucky are we? You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to tell you. This stuff is all manageable. And that's one of the things that a lot of the community on YouTube could ruin for someone if they let it get in their head. You always have to be careful what you put in your head, because once it's there forever. That's what a lot of people need to realize. Okay, what do we got here? And then we got Pello. A journalist colleague of mine gifted me his sci-fi collection when he had to move about 15 years ago. I haven't read most of these. I'm ambivalent about selling them because of it. Yeah, and that's another thing. There's things that I have not read, but am I going to get to it? You know what I mean? It's time for me to do this. I'm about to show a few things that I have been reading, show you where my head's at right now. Zinc Age Comics. I think you all have far too many books, and these doors are open to. And let me read this. I'm cracking up as I'm reading it, man. You'll get. Don't worry, Josh. You may get first shot more than you know. I think you all have too many books, and these doors are open to any and all donations. So, guys, anything you want to get rid of, Zinc Age Comics, I will vouch for him. He will appreciate them, read them, and he really absorbs them and talks about him, right? He's joking, but I'm saying do it, okay? And then Boondocks 90. I put 90% of my collection in storage 5 years ago, and I felt like I had a new lease on life. Now I'm mentally healthy enough to bring it back home in a healthier mindset. Yeah, I have had the burnout. I've had the thing where I look around and I've said, what have I done? I've had those moments where I'm like, have I wasted the money? And once you get away from it and get healthy, like you're saying and stuff, and to bring it back, I've heard more people regret selling their collections than the people who kept them. You know what I mean? Even in the books were like ripped up, torn, didn't give them away, didn't take care of them. That's what I'm trying to get at. So that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm realistic about it. There are things I am not getting rid of. I've carried it too long, but then there are things that I know I should get rid of, and that's where the conflict is, right? And who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? You know what I'm saying? I'm looking around at this, and I'm sort of like, I can't do it. You know what I mean? I still read. My problem is I still read these things, and these things do have memories in the real world, right? Zinc Age Comics is here, right? He gave me. There are 4 volumes of Sandman, the Anatone and which mean, yeah, we're going to wind this down, guys. I'm getting tired. The annotated uh, Sandman. Uh, he visited. He got in my room, was looking around, and I'm sorry, Josh, I can't remember if it was my birthday or Christmas, but I think it was my birthday. It had to be Christmas. I think he gave it to me in December in a parking lot at a convention in Bristol, if I'm remembering right. Oh, I'm sorry if I'm remembering this wrong, but I have things that were gifted to me, right? And I'm not going to let those go, man. People were considerate enough to get me something like that. It's a thoughtful gift. He got me one of the volumes, and we're both keeping an eye out for volume 2 of that. I have 3 of the 4 volumes. I had 2. Josh got the 3rd one for me, which was fantastic. I'm not going to get rid of that stuff. I have an absolute Watchman that a bunch of my friends got together and gave me when it was time for me to move 3 hours away to see my son. You know what I mean? My friends got together and got me that. They know my love of Watchmen. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you. There's a lot of things to consider, and there's a lot of things that mean more to me than just having the book. You know what I mean? It was the story behind it and things like that, because I can remember these things, right? So there's not a lot. Like I said, again, I can't emphasize enough. As much as I love YouTube and I've loved my time here and doing all this stuff like that, thank goodness that this hobby is going to survive, even though the main companies and a majority of today's comic book YouTube and stuff have the potential for really screwing it up, for a lot of people, I'm really glad that I was able to do all this stuff before there was a YouTube, when the comics would find you, and then you had to be the one to stick with this, even after discovering girls and the temptations of selling things when you were down on money and things like that. I never quit. You know what I mean? I've had 2 girlfriends break up with me because they found my comic books back a year apart in high school. Yeah, I've had, and I joke around with my wife. I love my wife. We are lifers and all that stuff. But I joke around where I'm like, I've got comics older than you. You know what I mean? I get to joke like that. So anyway, that's where we're at with things. So with the camera messing up, let me show you what I've been reading, just kind of give you an idea. So I've gone back and I'm reading these fantastic Destroyer books, catching up on them. These were in the house. The stepdad's friends, anybody who was in community college in the 70s, the Destroyer books, the Remo Williams Destroyer books. I'm reading Holy Mother. This one is actually very good. I think this was in 2008. The book started in 73, I believe, and they wrote the first draft of the book, created Remo the Destroyer in the 60s, around 63. The books didn't get published till 10 years later, and then they have come out. This is number 144, of the sequential adventure series and stuff, right? So we're reading that. Something I'm probably going to be able to get rid of is Warriors 3. This is an epic collection God, did I get this for $5 at a convention or in Ollie's? I think I got this at Ollie's. Let's give this camera something to focus on there. But anyway, this goes back to the 60s all the way through the Marvel Fanfare stuff by Charles Vess. There's Walt Simonson, Bill Willingham, Jack Kirby and stuff in this. And there's not a lot of Warrior 3 stories where they're the main characters. A lot of this has them popping up in it. So I'm reading through here. It's great to see some Thor Kirby. I skipped ahead to the Marvel Fanfare stuff by Charles Vess. I have all 3 issues of the Marvel Fanfare story signed by Charles Vess that he did. I'm reading that. I'm finally getting around to completely reading this. Both of these volumes from Titan Comics. This was originally a Helix comic, 12-issue miniseries from the 90s. I'm not going to get into what DC was doing with their Helix brand, but they were creator-owned books and stuff, right? But this is Walt Simonson, Michael Moorcock doing an Elric, the Eternal Champion sort of book. 12 issues with a bunch of characters from the multiverse of Michael Moorcock. Turns out Michael Moorcock may have been the person to come up with the idea of a multiverse before Gardner Fox. Okay. But anyway, this is 2 volumes reprinting the 12-issue set. The license, like I said, of Elric bounces around. And what is great is anything that Michael Moorcock writes of Elric, whether it be in the pulps, in magazines, in comic books, It is lore. It is canon. It is part of the multiverse and the story of Elric and the Eternal Champions and stuff like that. So I'm finally sitting down and reading this, okay, from beginning to end. I've read it sporadically here and there. And then what I was going to show from my buddy Charlton66, Steve, uh, man, I told him not to do it. He insisted and he did it. But he got my hardcover copy signed, a Breathtaker. He got it signed by Mark Hempel. Oh my God, Mark Hempel and Mark Wheatley, who did this, both legends in their own right. Mark Hempel really rubbed some people the wrong, got noticed, and then people have finally seen the brilliance of it with his the Kindly One's Sandman story with his art. Mark Wheatley goes way back to the 70s, I believe. But he got this signed and inscribed. And what I absolutely love is I have Mark Hempel saying to Howler Mouse. So, yeah, he got that signed for me. Talk about an act of kindness. And like I said, with the purge that's going on, it's not happening. That is not going to be purged. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, guys, with the camera messing up with the focus, with me running out of breath, with me realizing how hot and humid it is down here, I'm going to go upstairs, eat some chili made with turkey meat, and call it a day here. So let's make sure, see if there's any more, give this thing something to focus on. And we're going to end it right here with Paolo. That epic makes no sense. The modern stories are irrelevant, and the Solo Warriors 3s from the 70s and 80s could fit perfectly inside of a normal Thor epic collection. Yeah, it's a cash grab. I'm going to end it with this statement. But what I'm noticing is, uh, for 10 years, they blatantly said, we don't want you old white guys and all you old collectors and all you guys that are over 30 and all you guys that are over 25 and all you guys with different ideologies and beliefs and stuff like that. We don't want you. We're not making the comics aren't for you to move on. Yet they have no problem rehashing and repackaging and making, and thank goodness the epic collections are very cool, but they're coming out with omnibuy of everything is being reprinted, everything is being put out all over again. So even though they didn't want us, and they were saying this, at least the creators were, and they were being allowed to say it, and those editors and all those crews and stuff, well, here we are, where they are really, I'm saying the Warriors 3, we'll just put all the Warriors 3 stories together. That's what I'm trying to tell you. They are packaging, repackaging, and getting everything out there. I firmly believe that you could probably get a complete set at some point of almost every Marvel comic through trades of some sort. Trades, omnibuy, who knows? Epic collections, I don't know. I can experiment with it. Even I'm wondering even how obscure could we get with trying to find things like Millie the Model and stuff? Is it out there? I mean, obscure books. I haven't seen the Alice Cooper book of I haven't seen that collected. It could be out there. I know that I've got something out here. A lot of the horror stuff from the early 70s. I'm kind of wondering. I feel like that might be the stuff that might be hard to find, even though I've got Frankenstein up here, complete Frankenstein, Mike Plug, his stuff. Who knows? Who knows? I'm really wondering if we're going to reach a point where all this stuff is going to be available at a library. You know what I mean? Seriously, I'm dead serious, man. They just announced the Kelly Jones Kelly Jones did on his Facebook. Kelly Jones, they're coming out with a collection of his Swamp Thing stuff that he did with Lynn Wein. A mini series that did not sell well. They're even coming out with that. You know what I mean? Nancy A. Collins even got her Swamp Thing stuff out there collected. And I know there's fans of that stuff, but really for an absolute edition, you know what I mean, or whatever it was, to buy. Okay, no Millie the Model yet, but there is a collection of Greenberg the Vampire. There we go. That's what I'm saying, and I think that's the future. They've got all this stuff, and I think the future is going to be just rehashing that stuff and putting them out. I'm glad to be here for it right now. So you guys be excellent to each other. Read your comics, leave your comments. Thanks for put it in. Subscribe, thumbs up, share it, and yeah, guys, read your comic books. Later.